To scrap the Educational Maintenance Allowance, the EMA scheme in England, which is aimed at encouraging poorer pupils to stay in education, won't help young people in their search for a job. Let's talk to James Mills from the Save EMA campaign, who's with us now. I mean, the root of all of these problems seems to be education, of course, James. I mean, are you saying that we are looking potentially at a sort of blighted, lost generation here?
I think it is. I think it's quite scary what you've seen in 2007, summer 2007, you saw unemployment in the figures today from the 16 to 17 age group has actually ballooned. It's gone up almost double to about 30%. So, you know, that's the element of just 16 to 17, instant school leavers. That's the group that EMA actually gets and holds in. And that's because of the credit crunch. So at the same time the credit crunch happened, you saw youth unemployment for that group soar. And that's the group you can really track, because these are people who would be on EMA. And my biggest fear is that currently we have about just around under 20% youth unemployment, but I'm scared it's going to go to 26%, like you had in the 1980s, mainly because of the economic policy pursued back then. And, you know, what I really think...
Well, I mean, the government would say, wouldn't it, that these figures have peaked now, and they think the trend going ahead is going to come down.
Well, I hope so, obviously. I mean, I really do hope so. But, you know, what you really worry about and, you know, really ask yourself is why is it countries like Slovenia have less youth unemployment than we do, and Denmark? You know, if that is true, then why isn't it peaking, coming down now? But throughout this year, last year you saw the Future Jobs Fund cut, you saw Connections cut, and now you're going to see this year EMA cut and abolished.
Do you get a sense that maybe the government is now sort of just thinking a little bit more about sort of some sort of salvage to the EMA? I mean, there have been reports, haven't there, suggesting that they may be looking at that, not keeping the scheme because they said that was inefficient, but some other way of trying to keep young people in full-time education.
Well, one of the biggest parts of our campaign has been a deal's a deal, and that's basically where you say when you sign EMA, you sign a contract, and it's a deal. And there's lots of young people now, according to the UCU, 40% wouldn't have joined or started their courses if it wasn't for EMA. They've signed up to 2-year courses and only getting funding for just the first year. So our thing's always been to government, like, look, let's put one thing aside, let's talk about this group of 300,000 young people who've started their first year course to help them on to get that same commitment then, because otherwise you're teaching young people who've just entered adult life that a government doesn't keep its word, doesn't keep its bond.
And the people you speak to, I mean, you've obviously finished your full education, now you work as a researcher, but the people you speak to in that 16 to 24 age group who've lost that EMA or are losing that EMA, what impact is it having on their lives?
If I was honest with you, I think some of them feel quite disheartened. If you go to the website www.saveema.co.uk, you'll see on our boards there people who've written extensive, personal, and it's something that's really heart-wrenching, some of the things they say. It really has. I get messages sometimes straight through emails from it, and on my phone it'll be out, and it'll be some people saying that real heart life stories. They feel that there's a government that's given up on them, and that they've all been cut adrift. And I think that's a really very worrying message any government has to consider, is your overall message to young people are, do we want to invest in you, do we want to support you, or do we think you're dead weight and that doesn't account? And I think there's a bigger thing for your viewers, is that taxpayers' money is going to be wasted by this. Is if for every 100,000 people that go on a dole, that costs the taxpayer £500 million, the same amount as EMA. And for the exact same amount of money, this government want to bring the marriage tax incentive. And you saw last week a YouGov poll that said almost half the British public are opposed to EMA being scrapped. You got 27% of Conservative voters and half of Lib Dem voters oppose EMA being scrapped. And that's a YouGov poll saying that. So they're going against what I think is the public opinion on this, and also a mountain of evidence that says that EMA actually works, and all the economists.
James Mills from Save EMA campaign, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for your time.
Inflation will rise.